Well, what's our timeline? When do we want to get up? Get up. What's that song? Bob Marley.
Get up, stand
up. Speak up for your rights.
That's it, man.
Some may play YMCA. We should play that one real loud.
Exactly.
Welcome back to The Real Truth. That's what we're doing. We're trying to get to you what we believe to be the real truth. Today's guest is going to be David Rudolf, a lawyer friend of mine from North Carolina, has been very proactive. He's done some very high-profile cases. I'd recommend you check him out online, maybe watch some of his documentaries that have been produced out of the cases that he has done. He is starting an organization in North Carolina that I'm trying to dovetail into in Alabama and other lawyers across the nation as well, called the Rule of Law, which is primarily to educate people on what exactly those words mean. So with that being said, let's welcome David Rudolf to our show.
Today, I'm speaking with David Rudolf. Hello, David. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Tommy. Hope you are.
What prompted this discussion was you had posted a reach out to our National Association, American Board of Criminal Lawyers, about, quote, theruleofthelaw.org, specifically to North Carolina lawyers. And for those that don't know it, David is a good friend of mine from Charlotte, North Carolina. He does what I do. He's a criminal defense lawyer of not quite 47 years like me, but he's close. He's just younger than I am by just a hair. Correct, David?
No, actually, Tommy, I've been practicing now for 51 years.
Oh, my God.
I graduated from law school in 1974.
You got me 4 years.
There you go.
Damn. You're getting old, David.
I know, but I don't look my age.
Well, I feel 54 until I sit down for about 8 straight hours, and then I feel
exactly
84. Well, you know, we're a strange breed of cat. And when I first put out on our local listserv that I was looking for lawyers to do what you had done in North Carolina, I got some pushback because some of the lawyers claimed, well, that's what we've always done, is uphold the rule of law. But this is in a different context. So if you look what a lot of people do, Google rule of law, you'll see a lot of law that's evolved out of Australia, of all places, regarding the rule of law. And of course, you and I know they operate on a restorative justice kind of concept out of there when it comes to punishment, as opposed to retribution, much more New Testament oriented. But why don't you just put it in the context of what's going on from your perspective as you see it now, and what we're trying to do across the country to keep us from losing what we've had for so long, and that is 3 separate branches of government and the checks and balances that was intended by our founding fathers that seems to be evaporating.
Well, I don't think it's evaporating. I think it's being taken from us by the current administration. Yes, lawyers are always defending the rule of law, but we're defending it in the courthouse. And this is a little bit different because we now, as lawyers, have to defend the rule of law in terms of the public. And, the public doesn't necessarily understand exactly what the rule of law is, exactly what due process is, exactly what the checks and balances are supposed to accomplish. So I think our job as lawyers, I mean, we've taken an oath to defend the Constitution. We all take that oath seriously. And the Constitution and the rule of law and due process are under attack. There's no doubt about that at this point. So our job at this time, I think, is to educate the public. And so what we did in North Carolina was to reach out to all the lawyers in North Carolina that we could find email addresses for, about 3,700. And we sent a request asking them if they wanted to sign an open letter to the public regarding what's happening in the United States. And very quickly, we had 850 lawyers from North Carolina agree to sign this open letter, which is nonpartisan. It doesn't attack anybody. It simply explains why the rule of law is important, why due process is important, why these are fundamental, nonpartisan constitutional issues, and why everybody needs to be aware that they're under attack and that they need to be defended. And so our goal with this organization is to reach out to the communities that we all practice in. Our thought is that we have helped a lot of people over the years. There are a lot of people who are better off because of our efforts than they otherwise would have been. That we have more credibility than talking heads in a TV or a social media setting. And that we may be able to be more persuasive in terms of educating the folks out there about the issues we care about. So that's our goal, and that's why I hope that the lawyers who you've reached out to are willing to reconsider and help us in this effort.
Well, I've had some that are very active. One particular lawyer was very active in the most recent Jarecki series on HBO about the Alabama prison system, which I'm sure you saw, or maybe you didn't. It's very painful to watch. It's even more painful to walk into. But do you think, because of what you just said, we're more equipped to get that message out to the public coming from someone that's in the trench, almost as if we were having a seminar to educate people on what it means when you say the rule of law? I mean, we always follow the rule of law. We try to, but so district court judge follows the rule of law, appellate court judge affirms the rule of law in some of the litigation recently involving our current administration. And then the Supreme Court of the United States, they don't really address the underlying issue. What they seem to be doing procedurally, to me, is undoing the district court's stay of whatever was in place that the administration was trying to do. And they never really reach the merits of what the administration is trying to do. That's what I see.
Well, and I agree with your last point that what they've basically been doing is dissolving stays. You know, a stay, an injunction is designed to keep the parties in the status quo until a judge has a chance to rule on the merits. And a stay at the district court level is only granted if the judge believes that on balance, the plaintiff is going to prevail in all likelihood. So therefore, if the plaintiff is going to prevail, what you want to do is keep the status quo so that the plaintiff is not hurt in the interim until a ruling is finally issued. What the Supreme Court has done so far, at least, it seems to me, is to turn that on its head and allow these executive orders to proceed, which creates enormous penalties and disadvantages for the plaintiffs. They're fired. They're put on leave. The agency they work for is disbanded, and all that happens in the interim while the cases are pending in the court. And then you can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again, even if the courts eventually decide that what was done was wrong. I mean, how do you pay people back for losing their jobs? How do you put back an agency like AID, which took decades to build, once you've dismantled it?
What is AID? Tell me what.
USAID is the Agency for International Development. It's the part of the government that funds humanitarian causes throughout the world, which has earned us enormous goodwill around the world over the years. It's not dollars and cents, which is what the Trump administration seems to only consider. But goodwill is important. Businesses credit goodwill on their balance sheets, and certainly countries ought to consider goodwill on their balance sheet. So, and the other thing about the rule of law that I think people don't understand, and it's really important, and that is that if the rule of law is not followed, if what becomes important is who's in power, as opposed to what the law says, then the whole system of economics in this country falls apart. How do you enforce a contract? I mean, imagine you're suing, Steve Witkoff or, Jared Kushner, and, you have a contract with one of those people, and they say, I'm not going to honor the contract. I'm not going to pay you for what you've done. And now you sue that person. Now, if the rule of law is in place, then you're going to win. But if it's the rule of man, if it's the rule of the person, then those powerful people are going to win, and you're not. So the rule of law is this sort of way in which we level the playing field, so to speak, so that no one has an unfair advantage over anyone else. And I don't think most Americans really understand that aspect of the rule of law. That they take it for granted that if they are wronged in some way, they're going to get relief in the court. And that's because the rule of law has been entrenched in our country for 200 years. Instead, what's going to happen right now, if these things go the way they are, is that it's going to be, not the rule of law, but rather the rule of power. And that's a terrible situation for everybody to be in. And I think people have not yet come to grips with that.
Well, two things come to mind. First of all, we use and give lip service to these words, checks and balances. People don't really know how far those words go and what they mean, I don't think. And it runs parallel to the rule of law. Because when the founding fathers set up our country, they put these things in place so that what's happening now would not happen. And then, as an aside, I find it incredibly hard to believe that, and I'm embarrassed to say, because I did go to Auburn University, and it's very difficult for me to even give him the name Senator, so I will call him Coach. Coach Tuberville didn't even know what branches of government existed when he first sat down at the table in Washington. So you're correct. If senators don't know what it means, surely John Q. Public doesn't know what it means. So how do we go about doing that? I mean, we have to have forums and invite citizens to them to educate them, I suppose.
Well, or we go to where the citizens are. The citizens in our country have meetings on a regular basis in various settings. It may be a Kiwanis Club, luncheon. It may be some community meeting that is scheduled on a regular basis. But what we need to do is fan out and ask these people if we can come and speak. They're always going to be interested in hearing what we have to say. There's no reason why they won't be interested, especially if what we're talking about are current events. And they're always looking for speakers. They're always looking for interesting topics. And so I think it's just there for the taking. We just have to get organized enough so that we know we're reaching out to the right people. The various organizations know we're available. We have speakers set up who are ready to go into these meetings and answer questions and spur discussion. And, we educate juries all the time. So we certainly can educate the public about what we care about and what we believe in.
Yeah. As I tell people all the time, we're all in sales, every one of us. And whether it's selling a jury via marketing, I was a marketing major. So, but you have to believe in that story. And I don't use story in the sense of an untruth, but you're telling a story about your client when you stand up to talk to a jury about the facts and circumstances of the case that you're handling and under what circumstances whatever happened. Some of it rises to a level of defense. Some of it rises to a level of mitigation that might result in a lesser included conviction or something along those lines. But we're always trying to almost be a school teacher. I'm not being critical of our jury system because I do believe in it. But there's a joke out there that says you're dealing with a group of people who didn't know anybody that could get them out of jury service, which bothers me when people call me and ask me to get them out of jury service. I try to talk them out of it because we need them. We need those kind of people. But we're essentially being put in a position of being school teachers. And I don't mind taking on that load. I'm happy to be the 7th grade civics class teacher because everybody's forgotten what they learned in 7th grade civics class.
Well, and I sort of look at it as being educators. School teachers sort of have that phrase maybe even minimizes the importance of what we're doing. But I think if we talk about education and educating the public about the fundamentals of our society and our government, that I think has a serious ring to most people's ears. And so that's how I like to think about it. And I'll give you an example of what we can talk about. For example, everybody recognizes that the House of Representatives is basically a useless entity right now. It's not performing its function. Congress is not performing its function as a check and balance on the executive branch. Well, why is that? Well, part of it is when the Constitution was adopted, there were no political parties. And so, the founding fathers believed that each person who was elected to Congress or the Senate would be independent minded and would come to decisions based on what they thought was right. And that would mean that they would act in their own self-interest and the interests of their constituents, and not in the interests of some party leader or party line. Well, that was all well and good until political parties really started forming and becoming as powerful as they are now. Until money in funding elections became paramount. And now we have a situation where essentially the senators and congressmen or women are paralyzed because their leader, at least on the Republican side, gives them marching orders and threatens them with primaries and threatens to withhold funds or threatens to fund their opponents. And so now they're not free to exercise their intelligence and their instincts and their beliefs. Instead, they're beholden to the powers that be. And that's a great example of how the rule of law gets undone.
Well, I heard just about 10 days ago that OSHA had been closed because it had been defunded. Have you heard that?
I've not heard that, but I mean, it doesn't surprise me. This, almost every organization that helped individual people has been defunded.
Wow. So in my dynamic, which caused me to start a podcast, I was working for Sinclair Broadcasting Group. And I don't think my interview with Doug Jones, who I don't know if you watched it or not, I may have sent it to you, but he talked about the fact that our political parties now lack dialogue, not only with both sides of the aisle coming across and trying to meet in the middle, but even within their own parties. In other words, Republicans are not speaking to Republicans. Everybody's afraid. Seems to be like a lot of fear. Everybody's reacting to fear of being defunded, fear of being terminated. And it's just something that we need to get the word out. Do we have a script? And I don't mean that we're doing what they're doing, because Sinclair was sending must-run ads to the local Sinclair Broadcasting Group, was sending must-run news pieces that the local young lady or man who was reading a teleprompter read to the viewing audience that was not written by them, had nothing to do with Birmingham, Alabama, or Charlotte, North Carolina. And John Oliver did a piece on it. It was so comical because he had all these must runs and had all these cities with their anchors reading them. And they were all saying the exact same words. And it's a message that's being nationalized and centralized from our broadcast groups, which puts us, they've got a wider reach, puts us at a tremendous disadvantage. But this is what you're speaking about when you're talking about getting out and educating the public without the commercial spin on it that the TV stations have.
Well, and I don't believe that a anchor reading some must-read story has more power to influence people than we do when we speak in our local communities. You've been practicing law for a lot of years. I have too. I'm sure you've had thousands of clients over the years. I've had thousands of clients over the years. And all of those people have relatives and friends and acquaintances who know that some lawyer helped them in a time of need. And so we come with sort of inherent credibility, I think. I know that lawyers have a bad reputation generally in the public, but not among the people who have dealt with them. I mean, we help somebody and they're grateful. And they understand, what we've done and why we did it. So I just think that if we can get out there and talk to people, that we will have a powerful voice, especially, we have 850 lawyers signed up in North Carolina alone, all over the state, in every county. So imagine, us being able to reach out in every county with various lawyers going and talking to various groups, that can have a really powerful impact, and especially true with the midterms coming up. I mean, that's really going to be the game, is are we going to be able to gain back one of the houses of Congress, if not both, during the midterms? That's part of what I'm thinking about in terms of getting lawyers to go out and educate the public, so that when it comes time for the midterms, people really understand what the stakes are.
I used the word script a little while ago, but we all have different ways of saying the same thing. I guess an outline would be best. So if Tommy Spina wants to speak to the Rotary Club, which is a very conservative group of folks in Birmingham, Alabama, overall, it appears to me from having attended several Rotary Club luncheons, we need to be reading off the same page. And I'm not saying we need to use the same words, because that's doing what they're doing, because we all have different styles and different ways of explaining things. But are we going to have an outline or a template of some sort to make sure we cover the appropriate bullet points to communicate what we're trying to educate?
That's an interesting question. I haven't really thought about that yet. You're jumping, 2 steps ahead of where I am, but it's obviously an important thing. And you're right. The analogies that we use, I think what we need to do is we need to tell stories as we do in court about what is happening. So you can't talk about the rule of law in the vacuum. It's too abstract. So what you have to do, I think, is come up with local examples that people will have heard about. The guy who got screwed, by the local powers that be. In court because it was home court cooking, and you have to talk about the person who lost their life savings without any due process. The sort of the horror stories that we're now beginning to see on a daily basis as a result of the rule of law being sort of decimated is what we need to be talking about. So, my own thought is that it needs to be localized. Whatever is happening in Alabama is going to be different than what's happening in North Carolina. And so we each have to come up with our story, our narrative that we're going to use to educate on a particular point. And I think that's really the key. Now, you're right. I mean, we need to have some themes that we can talk about. And I think one of the things that I'd like to do is if we can get a lawyers for the rule of law set up in every single state, then we can do some coordination. And yes, I mean, we can spread some ideas around to everybody, and they can then take those ideas or topics and localize them so that they have the most impact. And I think that's sort of what you're talking about, but that's how I envision it working in the future.
What about the opposite side of the coin? The people that say, I like what's going on right now. I mean, after all, there are 75 million people out there that perhaps voted without a full awareness of where we were going to go and where we are going. How do you respond to them? They're just so steadfast and bought in and locked in.
Well, I don't think we ought to assume that. I know that seems to be the case, but what Pete Buttigieg does is go on Fox News and engage with the hosts and talk about it and try to educate. And I think that's what we need to do. I think there are a lot of people who were they in favor of immigration reform? Sure. When they thought it was getting rid of, as Trump would put it, the worst of the worst, the criminals, the people who are preying on other people. Sure, we want to get rid of those people. But what about when it comes to your gardener, who's been working with you for 20 years,
right.
Who has family? I don't think people want to see those people deported, even if they originally came here illegally. If they've been working, they're hardworking, they support the local community, they pay taxes. Why do we want to deport them and then have nobody to help us with our lawns or help with construction or whatever? So I think there are a lot of people who are in favor of immigration and deporting people, but not to the extent that it's going on now. And so I think there's opportunity to educate people. And again, we get to having to talk about the horrible cases, because that's what's going to hit people. If we can talk about some, upstanding member of the community who everybody sort of likes and respects, who have suddenly been, deported to wherever. I don't think most people are going to like that.
No, I know they're not. And I know it strikes a lot of people, especially construction people. Here in Alabama, I'm seeing, you know, Department of Justice has issued an edict, which is a whole conversation in and of itself, about the breakdown of DOJ, what appears to me to be a breakdown of DOJ. And you have people quitting who are being asked to do things that they just don't feel comfortable doing, and they don't do it. The most recent indictment, I think, of John Bolton was a classic example that U.S. attorney quit. He wouldn't do it, but somebody else did. I understand they are requiring local U.S. attorneys here to make 3 immigration cases per line U.S. attorney a month. I assume the same thing is going on up there. I've picked up a couple of illegal harboring of illegal aliens representing construction companies that they literally drop a net on the construction site and start looking for I-9s.
Yep.
It's, sending the National Guard into Chicago, sending them into San Francisco.
Or Memphis.
Yeah, Memphis is on the radar. I don't know why.
Oh, no, they're there. They're there. And they're coming to Birmingham. I mean, you can't ignore the fact that this is spreading.
No. Well, what's our timeline? When do we want to get up? Get up. What's that song by Bob Marley?
Get up, stand
up. Speak up for your rights.
That's it, man.
It should be our theme song. Some may play YMCA. We should play that one real loud.
Exactly. Exactly.
So in terms of a timeline and what you've done in North Carolina and what I'm trying to get organized in Alabama, what parameters are we looking at? Midterms are what?
A year away. They're a year away.
Are they November?
Midterms are November of 26.
Okay. Well, some jurisdictions in Alabama, there's a primary in May, for example, for the Republican.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
So you have a primary in an area where a Democrat couldn't win if he wanted to, and was the only candidate. He would still not win. So if you win the primary, you're automatically going to be unopposed in November. So we need to really start now, I think.
Well, and are judges appointed in Alabama, or are they elected?
They are elected.
Well, there you go. So that's a really important thing that we can do, because I know from my own experience that when I send out to my listserv, to the people I communicate with, my recommendations about judicial elections, people are so happy to get some information because they have nothing to go on when it comes to judicial elections. So when I say, here's who I think you should be voting for and here's why, people automatically do that because they have no other source of information. And so I think we can affect judicial elections in dramatic ways. And at least in North Carolina, for a while, the liberals had the Supreme Court. They ruled that gerrymandering was illegal, unconstitutional. And then the next election, the Republicans took over and literally took that decision and overruled it the next term. Literally.
And just right back where it was.
Right. So, judicial elections are really important these days, and especially the appellate courts, the courts of appeals and the Supreme Courts of the states. So that's an area where we can have real impact, especially if we have enough people, agreeing on who should be recommended for the bench.
I've written 2 op-eds recently. One had to do with me taking a moment to reread the Declaration of Independence, which I found to be fascinating how same things are today as they were in 1776, except for the use of the word hither in their drafting.
Right.
But when you look at the Declaration of Independence, they're talking about immigration. They're talking about taxes. They're talking about all of the things. They're talking about tariffs. They're talking about all the things that we're hearing today.
Yep.
For a good part of it. And then 10 years later, we end up with a constitution that I believe was made and created to be amended. I think that's historically what I've learned about it, and it has been amended a number of times. And I just have tremendous fear about if we don't have a little more input into what the top levels of our administration are pronouncing as their, quote, rule of law, without a check or a balance or without any discussion amongst the people, we're going to end up in a place where nobody really realizes we're going, which is, I don't want to call it a monarchy, but it seems like a monarchy. So I don't know how you feel about that, but
Well, I think I would call it an authoritarian state. A monarchy is almost too kind. There's a king in England. He's not doing anything to undermine the rule of law in England. That's up to the politicians. So I would call it a oligarchy. I'd call it a authoritarian regime. I don't think it's too far-fetched to worry about fascism eventually rearing its head here. I think it's already starting.
Well, I do know from my relationships formed from traveling overseas that the United States, who used to be looked upon as like the toppermost of the poppermost, as the Beatles referred to themselves, are really looked at with disdain these days, especially in the European Union. And you get mixed signals. It's just really hard to figure out what impact globally the United States is making on all of the other countries of the world. And can the other countries of the world save us from ourselves, for lack of a better expression?
Well, and part of the problem there is that what's happening here to a greater or lesser extent is happening in other countries, especially in Europe. So you have right-wing parties gaining more and more control. And I think a lot of it is just a straight up reaction to immigration, especially from the Middle East. Muslim immigration into, France and England and various other European countries, I think has had a really big impact on people's views. And keep in mind that in those countries, they have a sort of national identity. We've never had a national identity in the United States. But, if you're born in England, you have a national identity. You sort of, there's something that comes with being English that is just a national identity. When you have a bunch of people being brought in or allowed in who have totally different the ways of living. Yeah. It's jarring. It really is jarring for people in those countries in a way that it's really not as jarring here because we're used to seeing people from all different civilizations and cultures. So I understand the reaction in Europe a little bit better than I understand the reaction here. I don't understand how J.D. Vance can be against immigration when his wife is Indian. I mean, that makes no sense to me.
Mm-hmm. No, there's a lot of things that don't make any sense. Well, David, I think having you today has been a great honor for me. I know that people may not know what you have done in the cases you have handled. I know Brother Jarecki did the piece on not only cases I've been involved in tangentially, the Durst case. He did the Alabama prison case, and he's reached out to me recently, and I'm not sure what about, but I think it has to do with the Alabama prison dynamic. But those people that are listening to our show, I would like for them to check you out online. You did a case of quite a good bit of notoriety that made its way to Netflix, I think, called The Staircase, which you quickly did your own follow-up to say what was wrong with that fictionalized piece of reality.
Yes. Well, there's two versions of it. There's the documentary, which is 13 episodes, which is, I think, no credit to me, one of the great documentaries about lawyers that's ever been made. And then there's the ripoff that was done by some NBC or somebody that totally fictionalized it and made up stuff that didn't happen. So if you're going to watch anything about The Staircase, watch the original documentary, 13 episodes on Netflix. It really is, again, it's just an amazing exploration of the criminal justice system in the United States. Has really, my role is simply as the person who allowed them to film.
I was going to ask you that. Do they reach out to you while you're prepping the case? And
yeah, they actually reached out to me about a month after I took the case,
and you allowed them into. With your client's permission, absolutely, I'm sure.
Yes, and with various safeguards to the attorney-client privilege. So we don't need to get into those here, but there were clear rules that were put into effect to safeguard the attorney-client privilege.
Okay, so Mr. Jarecki didn't do that piece. He did another
he
one.
Did not.
He did a thing on the pharmacist or something, I think was his.
This was a French film crew that had won the Academy Award for Best Documentary the year before, a documentary called Murder on a Sunday Morning, which again is a great documentary about the criminal justice system. And this French film crew was not interested in who did what or who's guilty or who's not guilty. They wanted to understand the American criminal justice system. And so the first one was about a public defender and a poor defendant and how that played out in Florida. And then they wanted a case involving a defendant who was well-to-do, who had hired his own lawyer. And that's how they found me.
Well, so the one you're suggesting people watch, and I suppose watching those two, what do you call them? Netflix, not necessarily Netflix series, but streaming series would also lend itself to educating people on the rule of law, would it not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can't watch The Staircase and feel like the criminal justice system was operated in a fair way in that particular case.
Well,
no matter what you think of the defendant's guilt or innocence, everybody agrees that it wasn't a fair trial.
And what was the name of the other one?
The other documentary is Murder on a Sunday Morning.
Okay. Well, David, I want to thank you for taking your time to be with me. We go back a ways. Obviously, you go back further than I thought you go back, but you always are there for me when I need something in North Carolina, and I'm always here for you when you need something in Alabama. People don't understand that we have an organization called the American Board of Criminal Lawyers that effectively makes us a nationwide law firm because we have lawyers that we know personally and have had a social interaction with and know their children and have them to our houses for dinner that essentially gives us a lawyer in every state in the country, almost. I think we're still missing Alaska and maybe another state or two, but I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time to help us help this country get educated about what we do as lawyers and about how that's being undercut by our current administration. So thanks for your time. And
Tommy, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I might follow up with you for a part 2 one day.
I'm happy.
Let me know where we're going next with the rule of law. And I'll put together my 3 or 4 serious people that want to get engaged in doing what you're asking be done. Maybe help me get that petition organized, similar to what you did in North Carolina, and I can circulate it here. And
absolutely,
I did it on our listserv, and I got some positive feedback, and I got some snarky feedback from those that say, "Isn't that what we do anyway?"
Well,
it is, but right now it's different.
It's a different context.
Yeah. Have a great day.
Thanks, Tommy.
And I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for being.
You take care.
Bye-bye.
Yep, bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me today on The Real Truth. My name is Tommy Spina. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. I hope you will follow or subscribe to my podcast and listen in to the next episode. If you found it valuable, please take a moment to rate it and review it. It helps us to reach more listeners that care about the issues that matter. Share it with a friend. Stay engaged and remember, the truth matters. I'll see you next time.